The night she sold her virginity to pay her father's debt, Sarah Godwill didn't expect the highest bidders to be the most feared twin brothers in Seoul, or for their winning whisper to be a vow, not a demand. Seoul's rain fell like diamonds against the penthouse glass, a glittering curtain separating Sarah Godwill from the city that had swallowed her whole. Inside, the silence was colder. She stood in the center of a living room vast enough to hold her entire childhood village, her simple cotton dress clinging to her damp skin. The air smelled of expensive sandalwood and unspoken threat. 3 months ago, she was a scholarship student in Paris, studying art history. Then the call came. Her father, a well-meaning trader in Lagos, had gambled on a bad deal with the wrong people. The debt collector's voice on the phone was polite, lethal. The amount was astronomical. The only asset she had left, they'd suggested with chilling calm, was her untouched beauty. The auction on the dark web was a blur of shame. The buyer, anonymous, known only by the codename Dragon and Tiger. The elevator dinged, a soft chime that sent her heart into her throat. They entered not as men, but as a single force of shadow and elegance. Park Jae-ho and Park Jun-ho. Identical, yet fundamentally different. Billionaires by day, rulers of Seoul's underworld by night. They moved with a lethal, synchronized grace, their sharp black suits worth more than her father's life. Jae-ho, the elder by minutes, had eyes like polished onyx, calculating, penetrating. He removed his coat, his gaze mapping her trembling form with detached interest. Jun-ho's eyes, the same dark shade, held a different fire, a smoldering intensity that traced the frantic pulse at her throat. "Sarah," Jae-ho said. His voice was low, a smooth baritone that vibrated in the spacious room. "The contract is settled. Your father's debt is erased." Relief, hot and desperate, flooded her, followed immediately by a wave of terror. This was real. Jun-ho stepped closer, his fingers lifting to almost brush a stray curl from her cheek. She flinched. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You are safe here," he murmured, but the words felt like a warning. "This penthouse is your home now. No one can touch you. But you must understand, you are ours." Jae-ho circled her, a predator assessing. "Our world is one of absolute loyalty and absolute secrecy. You see nothing. You hear nothing. You belong only to us." "For how long?" The question left her in a whisper. The twins exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them in an instant. Jae-ho's answer was final. "Until the terms of our acquisition are fully met." Jun-ho reached into his pocket. She recoiled, but he only produced a slender black velvet box. Inside, nestled on silk, was a choker, a breathtaking band of obsidian diamonds, scented with a rare, fiery crimson stone. It was the most beautiful, most frightening thing she'd ever seen. "A symbol of our protection," Jun-ho said, his voice dropping to an intimate timbre. "And our claim." As he moved to fasten it around her neck, the cold gems kissed her skin. Before the clasp could click, Jae-ho's secure phone buzzed on the marble table. He glanced at the screen, his face hardening into a mask of icy fury. "It seems," he said, his eyes locking onto Sarah's wide, fearful ones, "a rival faction already knows you're here. They've made a move on the building." The panic room was a silent, pressurized tomb. Sarah hugged her knees on the cool steel floor, the unclasped diamond choker still in its velvet box beside her. The thud of the ceiling door still echoed in her bones. She was a possession, and already, she was a target. 23 minutes later, the door hissed open. Jun-ho stood there. A fresh scratch marred his jaw, his suit jacket gone, shirt sleeves rolled up. The scent of cold night and something metallic clung to him. His eyes, however, held a disarming softness as they found her. "It's handled," he said, extending a hand. "Come." She placed her hand in his, shocked by the warmth and gentleness of his grip. Back in the penthouse, it was pristine. Only a shattered modern vase by the entrance hinted at violence. Jae-ho stood at the window, a glass of liquor in hand, his back to them, a silhouette of contained power against the city's blaze. "The Kim Jong Syndicate," he stated, not turning. "They thought our new acquisition was a vulnerability." He finally faced her, his gaze falling to the velvet box in her hand. They now understand you are a protected asset. Remember that. Put it on. His words were a cold comfort. Her life was a chess piece. Her fingers shook as she opened the box, fastened the cold, glittering band around her own throat. The clasp clicked this time, a sound of finality. Good, Jae-ho murmured. You're trembling, Jun-ho observed. He guided her to the vast sofa, fetched a cashmere throw, and draped it over her shoulders. The tenderness was unnerving. He knelt before her, his eyes level with hers. This life is a series of locked doors. We will teach you which is which. But you must choose to see us, not just the monsters. Jae-ho approached, stopping behind his brother. He looked down at her, his expression unreadable. The first lesson. Trust is the only currency here. We just defended yours. It's time for a deposit. Jun-ho's thumb stroked the back of her hand, still in his. Rest. Your room is yours alone. No one enters without your permission. As they turned to leave, Jae-ho paused at the doorway, looking back. His voice was a low, dark promise that hung in the perfumed air. Tomorrow night, Sarah, you dine with us. Officially. And understand this. Your education begins then. You'll have the two of us tonight. The line landed not as a salacious promise, but as a chilling decree of total immersion into their shadow world. The door closed, leaving Sarah alone, her fingers frozen on the glittering stones at her throat, realizing the true meaning of his words. Tomorrow, the gilded cage would open its door, and the twins would step inside. A sleek, midnight blue dress was laid out on Sarah's bed the next evening. Simple, elegant, and worth more than her tuition. It was not a request. She put it on, the silk whispering against her skin like a secret. The choker was its only accessory, a permanent, gleaming weight. The dining room was a tableau of severe elegance. A long black marble table, two places set at one end, a single place opposite them. Jae-ho and Jun-ho stood waiting, mirror images in tailored dark gray suits, their presence dominating the low-lit space. Sit, Jae-ho said, gesturing to the lone chair. A silent server presented exquisite dishes. Hanwoo beef, jeonbok porridge, delicacies she'd only read about. The twins watched her, their scrutiny more potent than the food. Do you know why we bought you, Sarah? Jun-ho asked, swirling a glass of red wine. His tone was conversational, yet it cut through the silence like a blade. She set her fork down. To own something rare. Jae-ho's lip twitched, the ghost of approval. Partially. In our world, everything is a transaction. But some things, some people, are investments in something beyond money. He leaned forward slightly. We own many things, but we have nothing that is solely ours. Untouched by the blood and lies of our empire. You, before last night, were that. A blank canvas, Jun-ho added, his gaze intense. Your fear is pure. Your anger, when it comes, will be pure. We require that purity. The confession was more intimate than a touch. They hadn't bought her just for possession, but for her essence. It was terrifyingly romantic. What do you require of me tonight? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Jae-ho exchanged a glance with his brother. Your attention. Your observation. The first test is not of your body, but of your mind. Can you see us? Not as one entity, but as two men. As the meal progressed, they began to reveal themselves through stories, veiled, but telling. Jun-ho spoke of a childhood dog, his voice softening. Jae-ho recounted a corporate takeover, his eyes glinting with cold victory. Sarah listened, her artist's eye beginning to see the fractures in their mirrored facade. Jun-ho's empathy buried under violence, Jae-ho's ambition tempered by a ferocious, hidden code. Just as a delicate dessert was served, Jae-ho's phone buzzed. He read the message, his face going cold. He looked at Sarah, then at his brother. The Kim Jong boss. His center gift. An apology for last night's misunderstanding. He paused, the air thickening. It's downstairs. Jun-ho's hand tightened on his glass. What is it? Jae-ho's eyes never left Sarah's. A wedding gift. For the three of us. He stood, the movement fluid and deadly. It seems our secret is no longer a secret. The entire underworld now knows we have a wife. The revelation hung in the air, a grenade with its pin pulled. Sarah's newfound understanding shattered into 1,000 new fears. Her existence was now public, making her a permanent target and a political pawn. Jae-ho started toward the door. Come, Sarah. It's time you saw the kind of gifts our world gives. Jae-ho led the way to a private elevator, Jun-ho a silent, protective shadow behind Sarah. The descent was swift, silent. They exited into a stark, temperature-controlled receiving room in the building's sublevel. A single, ornate lacquer box sat on a steel table. A nameless subordinate bowed deeply, his face pale. It was delivered by a courier with the Kim Jong crest. No note. Jae-ho approached the box. With a deliberate motion, he lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on black silk, was a pair of exquisite, hand-carved jade hairpins, traditional symbols of marital harmony. But thrust violently through the center of each pin, shattering the jade, was a spent bullet cartridge. The message was clear, a mockery of their union and a promise to shatter it. Jun-ho let out a low, venomous laugh. An apology, he calls this. His hand came to rest, possessively, on the small of Sarah's back. She jumped at the contact. It's not a threat to us, Jae-ho said, his voice dangerously quiet as he closed the lid with a final snap. It is a threat to her. A declaration that they see her as the point of fracture. He turned, his obsidian eyes capturing Sarah's. They believe we will fight over you. That you will divide us. That you are a weakness. He stepped closer, Jun-ho's hand still burning through the silk on her back, effectively trapping her between them in the sterile room. The air vanished. They are wrong, Jun-ho murmured, his breath stirring her hair. His voice was a soft counterpoint to his brother's steel. You will not divide us. You will unite us. A terrifying, thrilling understanding began to dawn in Sarah's gut. This was the true nature of their acquisition. Jae-ho lifted a hand, his knuckles brushing her cheek, a touch so at odds with the violence in the box. The contract was for your life, your loyalty, your innocence. The time for symbolic protection is over. The choker is not enough. They must see you are truly, irrevocably ours. Not a painted canvas, but a living part of our foundation. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird. What are you saying? It was Jun-ho who answered, his lips close to her ear, his voice a vow and a command. The dinner was the prelude. The gift is the provocation. The waiting ends now. He looked over her head, meeting his brother's gaze in a moment of profound agreement. Jae-ho's fingers slid to her chin, tilting her face up to his. His gaze was possessive, heated, and utterly final. You'll have the two of us tonight, Sarah, he said, the words delivered not as a whisper, but as a dark, solemn decree. Not as your protectors. Not as your teachers. As your husbands. The world must hear your first cry and know it is a song of our strength, not a scream of your fear. The twins stepped back in unison, each offering a hand. Not to pull her apart, but to lead her forward. The path before her was no longer a hallway to a bedroom, but a threshold into the heart of their shared empire, their shared desire. Every choice, every shred of her old life, was now behind her. The walk back to the penthouse was a silent procession. Sarah's mind was a whirlwind, her body thrumming with a terrified electricity. They led her not to her separate room, but to the master suite, a cavernous space of black marble, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a platform bed that looked more like a throne of shadows. The door closed. The world outside ceased to exist. For a long moment, they simply looked at her, the intensity in their eyes stripping away the last vestiges of pretense. Then, the dynamic shifted, and the differences between them bloomed, captivating and disarming her. Jun-ho moved first. He approached, not with Jae-ho's calculated intensity, but with a focused gentleness. His fingers went to the clasp of her diamond choker. This served its purpose, he said softly, his knuckles brushing her nape. He set the priceless item aside on a table as if it were mere glass. You wear our claim inside now, not just on your skin. He then stepped to her side, his presence warm and steady. "Look at him," Jun-ho instructed, his voice a low guide as he turned her slightly toward Jae-ho, who stood watching like a sovereign. "He is the storm. The unyielding mountain. He will make you feel safe in a way that makes you forget what danger even is." Jae-ho's gaze held hers, unwavering. He was magnetism and command personified. Then Jun-ho turned her face gently back to his thumb tracing her jawline. "And I," he said, a surprising, wry smile touching his lips, "am the fire that dances in the storm's eye. I will make you forget to be afraid at all." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He will teach you the rules of our world. But I, little wife, will teach you how to break the ones that don't matter." The unexpected humor, the glimpse of a man beneath the mafia prince, sent a strange, warm flutter through her panic. Jae-ho finally spoke, stepping closer, completing the circle. "You are the bridge between the mountain and the fire, Sarah. The point where our strengths meet and are made greater." He didn't touch her, but his attention was a physical caress. "Your loyalty will be our fortress. Your heart," he paused, and for the first time, she saw a crack in his perfect control, a raw, hungry need. "Will be our greatest victory." He reached out then, not to take, but to offer. His palm was upturned. An invitation. Sarah looked at Jun-ho's encouraging, fiery eyes, then at Jae-ho's commanding, storm-filled ones. The fear was still there, a sharp edge. But beneath it, something new was stirring. A profound pull, a terrifying attraction to both sides of the coin they presented. They weren't just claiming her. They were revealing themselves, and the complexity was breathtaking. She placed her hand in Jae-ho's. His fingers closed around hers, strong and sure. Jun-ho's hand came to rest on her shoulder, a brand of solidarity. In that moment, she didn't just step toward the bed. She stepped toward them. The line between captive and willing participant began to blur, not with resignation, but with a dawning, electrifying curiosity. The cliffhanger of her choice was over. The cliffhanger of her surrender, and what would be born from it, had just begun. The world narrowed to the space between the three of them. Jae-ho led her to the edge of the vast bed, his grip on her hand transitioning from an invitation to an anchor. Jun-ho's hand remained on her shoulder, a steady, warm pressure. "Look at me," Jae-ho commanded, his voice a low vibration in the quiet room. When her frightened eyes met his, he continued, the words deliberate. "This is not an act of consumption. It is a sacrament. You are not being taken from yourself. You are being brought into us." His free hand came up to cradle her face, his thumb stroking her cheek with a shocking tenderness that contradicted his harsh words. "Your fear is acknowledged. But you must now choose to give it to me. Can you do that?" Tears she hadn't realized were forming spilled over. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. He accepted it like a solemn vow. His kiss was not what she expected. It was not violent, but devastatingly thorough. A claiming that was as much about possession as it was about communication. It was a kiss that mapped her, learned her, and began the slow, deliberate work of dismantling her terror. When he pulled back, her breath was ragged, but a strange calm had settled in her core. Jun-ho was there the moment Jae-ho created space. He turned her face toward him, his eyes searching hers. "Now," he murmured, a playful, dangerous light in his gaze. "Forget the world. There is only this room." His kiss was different. It was all spark and ignition, a clever, seductive flame that chased away the last of her chill. He smiled against her lips, a real smile. "See? Not so frightening." He was the one who guided her to sit, who knelt to remove her shoes with a reverence that stole her breath. Jae-ho watched, his sharp eyes missing nothing, a silent architect of the scene. Jun-ho's touch was instructional, patient, turning every new experience into a lesson in sensation rather than violation. He whispered against her skin, jokes only for her, teasing away her tension until a gasp escaped her that was not born of fear, but of shocked pleasure. It was Jae-ho who gathered her close when she trembled from overwhelming sensation, his arms an unbreakable fortress. "You are doing perfectly," he said into her hair, his voice gruff with an emotion that cracked his icy exterior. His own touch was deliberate, profound, focusing not on taking but on gifting. Waves of intensity that pulled her deeper into a current where thought dissolved. She was no longer between them. She was the center they orbited, the point of convergence for the storm and the fire. And in that maelstrom, a shocking, impossible truth blossomed in Sarah's heart. She felt cherished. In their dangerous, twisted way, they were building something with her, not just upon her. Later, as dawn painted the Seoul skyline in hues of rose and gold, Sarah lay entangled in their arms, physically spent, her mind reeling. Jun-ho slept with a peaceful expression, one arm draped possessively over her waist. Jae-ho was awake, propped on an elbow, watching her. He traced the line of her collarbone, where the choker had been. "They will come for you again," he stated, the real world rushing back in with his words. "Now, more than ever. Because you are no longer just a symbol. You are our heart, exposed." He leaned down, his lips brushing her forehead in a kiss that felt like a brand and a blessing. "And we will burn their world down to keep it beating." The days that followed were a study in surreal duality. By day, Sarah inhabited a life of impossible luxury and quiet tutelage. Jun-ho, true to his word, became her playful shadow. He taught her to mix a perfect old-fashioned in the penthouse bar, his hands guiding hers around the crystal decanter. "The secret is in the stir, not the shake," he'd murmur, his laughter warm against her temple when she'd fumble. He showed her how to defend herself, turning lessons in the private gym into a dance of close contact and whispered encouragement. "Aim for the weakness they don't show," he'd say, adjusting her stance, his touch lingering. With him, the terrifying Mafia prince became Jun-ho, the man who teased her into smiling. Jae-ho's education was different. In his stark, modern study, he taught her the invisible architecture of their empire. He explained the legitimate fronts, the shipping conglomerates, the tech ventures, and, with a chilling clarity, the powerful, shadowed veins that fed them. "To protect you, you must understand what you are protected from," he said, his gaze intense. She found herself listening, learning, her artist's mind fascinated by the brutal canvas of power he painted. His rare, unguarded moments, a hand resting on the back of her chair as he looked over documents, stirred a different, deeper pull within her. She was falling for them, not as one entity, but as two men who completed each other, and who were, piece by piece, completing her. One evening, as they shared a quiet dinner, Sarah laughed at a dry witticism from Jae-ho. The sound was genuine, bright. The twins went still, exchanging a look of profound, silent triumph. It was in that fragile, perfect moment that every screen in the penthouse, the wall-mounted TVs, the tablet on the sideboard, even Jae-ho's secure laptop, flickered and went black. A single, horrifying image replaced them all. A live, grainy feed from a street camera in Lagos. It showed her father, Mr. Godwill, locking up his small import office at dusk, unaware he was being watched. A digitally scrambled voice filled the room, dripping with malice. "Park Jae-ho. Park Jun-ho. You took a prize from the Kim Jong network. We are here to renegotiate. You have 12 hours to transfer operational control of your southern port. If you refuse, or if you try to trace this, the old man in Lagos will have a fatal accident." So common in such a vibrant city. The screens went dark. The silence was absolute. Jun-ho's fist clenched on the table. Jae-ho's face was a mask of icy fury. "They didn't breach our perimeter," he said, his voice deadly calm. "They used a backdoor in the satellite security feed. A backdoor only someone with internal architectural knowledge could plant." His gaze held a terrifying truth. "This isn't just an attack, Sarah. This is a betrayal from within our house." The danger was no longer a concept. It was a live feed to her father's vulnerable, everyday life. The gilded cage was secure, but the world outside it had just become a weapon. The next 12 hours were a masterclass in ruthless efficiency and raw fear. Sarah was not sidelined. She was their central command. Using her intimate knowledge of her father's routines, the cafe he visited, the route he walked, she helped Jae-ho's trusted offshore team in Lagos orchestrate a coincidental intervention, spiriting her father to a safe house under the guise of a community policing initiative. Meanwhile, Jun-ho led the internal purge with a furious, joyful precision. The traitor was a mid-level tech director, bought by the Kim Jong. His confession, extracted in the sub-level, was swift. The threat was neutralized. Her father was safe, confused but unharmed, on a secure line promising a surprise vacation. In the quiet that followed the storm, something fundamental had settled. That night, as Seoul glittered below them, Sarah turned to the twins. "No more cages," she said, her voice firm. "Inside or out. I am not your weakness. I am your strength. And I choose this. I choose you. Both of you." The love that followed was not a surrender, but a claiming on all sides. It was passionate, tender, and absolute. 2 years later, the penthouse was filled with sunlight and the sound of gurgling laughter. Sarah sat on the sun-drenched terrace, a contented smile on her face as she watched Jae-ho. He was meticulously instructing a groundskeeper far below on the pruning of a rare willow tree, his phone to his ear, his free hand gently rocking the sleek triple pram beside him. His focus, even in gentleness, was total. He was teaching their sons, Minit-jun, Ji-hoon, and Seo-hyun, by example, the value of care and command. A pair of strong, warm hands covered her eyes. "Guess who?" Jun-ho's voice whispered in her ear, his lips brushing her temple. She laughed, leaning back into him. "The world's most distracting appa." He spun her chair around, kneeling before her, his eyes sparkling. He presented a messy, beautiful finger painting, clearly made by a tiny hand. "Our youngest artiste's first masterpiece. I facilitated." He winked. "Jae-ho teaches them order. I teach them creative expression." Her heart swelled, overflowing. She loved them separately, completely. She loved Jae-ho for his unwavering strength, for the secure world he built where their children could sleep in peace. She loved Jun-ho for the laughter that echoed in the halls, for the joy he unearthed in every moment. She was not born for a gilded cage. She was born to be the heart of their empire, the mother of their heirs, and the love of their lives. As Jun-ho pulled her to her feet to dance to silent music and Jae-ho turned from the window to watch them with a smile that was hers alone, Sarah knew. This was not an ending. It was the beautiful, chaotic, perfectly balanced beginning of their forever. If this story of dangerous love and unbreakable vows captured you, make sure you never miss a series like it. Subscribe for more exclusive cinematic stories. Like to show your love for the genre. Share with fellow fans of romance that thrills. Comment with your favorite moment. Thank you for watching.